Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He moved to the edge of town for peace. Just him, his dog, and a camera tower. But when a rogue HOA militia tried to control what wasn't theirs, they picked the wrong ex-Marine to mess with. This isn't just a neighborhood dispute, it's a suburban war. I moved out to Pinewood because I thought it'd be quiet, peaceful. No one breathing down my neck, no sirens, no concrete jungles. Just me, my dog Boone, a good stretch of land, and the occasional sound of squirrels bickering in the oaks behind my porch. I'd done my years, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and now I just wanted to live my life without someone thinking they get a say in it. The house wasn't much when I bought it. A little run down, roof needed fixing, the deck was half rotten, and the plumbing made noises like it had PTSD of its own. But the land, almost an acre tucked right along the border of a neighborhood called Pinewood Estates, that was gold. Private, off the HOA grid, and dirt cheap because folks in HOAs don't like being near things they don't control. I signed the papers in full knowledge of that. Had my lawyer comb through everything. Property lines, zoning codes, HOA declarations, all of it. My lot was outside their jurisdiction. I was free, or so I thought. About 2 weeks after I moved in, I found a note taped to my mailbox. Big HOA letterhead, fancy seal, and a ridiculous signature from someone calling herself President Diana Shaw. The note said my grass exceeded regulation height, my satellite dish was improperly mounted, and my garbage bin violated community visual standards. I laughed, tossed it in the trash. The grass was ankle high, the dish worked just fine, and the trash bin was on my land, not theirs. Week after that, I get another one. This time, the language is more aggressive. Failure to comply will result in fines. They even had the gall to list a total $350. That one I didn't just toss. I mailed it back. Empty envelope, no return address. Just a sticky note inside that said, in capital letters, "Not a member, stop." Didn't help. That's when I met Roger Hannity. Picture a guy who peaked in high school, failed the police academy, but never quite got over either. Bald on top, buzz cut on the sides, mirrored sunglasses he wears even on cloudy days, and a tactical vest, 2 sizes too small, probably bought online from a site that also sells prepper food buckets. He came strutting down my gravel driveway one Saturday like he owned it, his white neighborhood patrol SUV idling behind him. I was on the porch tightening a floodlight bracket. Boone started barking before the man even opened his mouth. Morning," he said, standing like he was waiting for me to salute. "Afternoon," I answered, not bothering to look up. "You Jason Turner?" "That's what the deed says." "I'm Roger Hannity, head of community safety for Pinewood Estates." "Cool. This isn't Pinewood Estates." He paused. I could see the wires in his brain cross like a dog hearing a vacuum turn on. "You're adjacent to the community." "Correct. And the HOA has certain visual and procedural expectations, which don't apply to me." "That's debatable." I stood up and wiped my hands on my jeans. "No, it really isn't." He looked past me, eyeing the new tower I'd started assembling behind the garage, a steel-framed rig with motion cameras and 2 solar panels on top. "What's that for?" "My company." "You running a business out of here?" "Yeah, security consulting, cameras, alarms, perimeter surveillance, all legal, all licensed. Want a brochure?" He didn't answer, just squinted at the tower like it personally insulted his sense of order. "That's going to bother some folks." "Then some folks need to buy taller fences." Roger didn't say goodbye. He just turned and walked off, muttering something into a cheap walkie-talkie clipped to his belt, like he thought it made him look official. The SUV peeled out like it was chasing a stolen car. Boone pissed on the tire tracks for good measure. The next week, I started getting real mail, certified letters, photos of my camera rig, complaints about aesthetic disruption, and accusations of unauthorized surveillance. They claimed I was recording neighbors. Funny, since my nearest neighbor's house was 200 feet away, and the cameras were pointed at my own perimeter. They included a new fine, this time over $1,000. That was the last straw. I called my lawyer, had him draft a formal cease and desist letter, complete with maps, code citations, and a notarized declaration that my property was private and exempt from HOA governance. We mailed it, emailed it, and even dropped a copy in the HOA's little community mailbox shack. No response, but the passive aggression ramped up. The patrol SUV started parking across from my driveway. Different guys each time, all of them with matching polos and a weird hunger in their eyes, like this was the closest they'd get to actual authority. Sometimes they'd pretend to jog past with GoPros strapped to their heads. Other times they'd sit in their SUV and radio each other like they were watching a hostage negotiation. I ignored it until one of them tried to open my mailbox. I was in the living room when I saw him. Scrawny guy with a sunburn and aviators, tugging on the latch like he had the right to be there. I came out fast and hard. "You got a federal warrant, pal." He jumped like I'd shot him. "That's a community box." "Wrong. That's a U.S. Postal Service box on my land. Try that again. I'll have the feds up your ass so fast your vest will spin." He bolted, but I knew it wasn't over. This wasn't just neighborly tension anymore. This was a pissing contest with a group of suburban cowboys who'd built their little kingdom and couldn't stand the idea of someone living outside their rulebook. So I did what I was trained to do. Prepare. I upgraded the tower, thermal cams, backup batteries, floodlights with motion sensors. Boone got a new collar, GPS enabled, and I started documenting everything, timestamps, faces, plates. Because whatever this was building toward, I had a feeling it wasn't going to be solved with polite conversation. It started subtle. A look here, a closed door there. The kind of quiet, cold shoulder that spreads like mold, slow, silent, and suffocating. After that stunt with the mailbox, I figured the patrol boys would back off. I had footage. I had timestamps. Hell, I even printed out a copy of the federal statute about tampering with mail and taped it right under the box. But no, they just changed tactics. The SUV kept showing up, but now it parked a little farther down the road. Just barely off my property line. I'd see the silhouette of a man inside, sipping coffee, phone in hand. Sometimes they'd idle the engine long enough to rattle my windows. Sometimes they'd shine a light through my kitchen at night. Not bright enough to prove anything, but enough to let me know they were there. And the neighbors? Well, they changed too. Mrs. Hensley, the retired librarian who used to wave when I walked Boone, now crossed the street like we carried the plague. Her husband wouldn't even make eye contact. The teenage kid next door stopped shooting hoops on his driveway. The sound of the bouncing ball disappeared overnight. I heard his dad yelling something about not getting involved with that weirdo next door who has surveillance equipment. Then came the flyers. One morning I found a crisp white paper taped to my front gate. Community notice, it said in bold all caps. Underneath was a list of potential security threats, including vague references to ex-military residents with surveillance systems and concerns about unknown equipment aimed at homes. It didn't name me, but it might as well have included my photo and social security number. I took it down, scanned it, and sent it to my lawyer. Next day, I spotted the same flyer posted in the community mail kiosk, then one pinned to a utility pole, then another stapled to a tree on the trail entrance near my property line. It was organized, coordinated. A week later, a neighbor I'd never spoken to before, guy named Mr. Banks, pulled into my driveway while I was hosing Boone off after a muddy walk. I turned the water off, wary. He stayed in his truck a moment, then rolled down the window and said, "You might want to watch your back." "Excuse me." I heard them talking. The HOA folks, that Roger guy, and a few others. They don't like that you're ignoring them. They think you're making the whole neighborhood look weak. "They say that to you." He shrugged. "Not directly, but I was at a meeting. It got, weird." I asked him why he was telling me. He just muttered, "You served, right? Thought you should know." And drove off. Later that week, I got another envelope, hand-delivered, no postage, slipped under my front door. This one was more direct. "You are under observation. Cease unauthorized installations immediately or face legal consequences." No return address. No names. Just that. I forwarded it to my lawyer again. We submitted a formal complaint to the county about harassment. Filed paperwork to declare the security tower a licensed commercial testing structure, which it was. But bureaucracy moves like molasses in January, and HOA lunacy spreads like wildfire. The HOA website, which I'd never bothered to visit before, now had a community alerts section with headlines like "Unlicensed surveillance may be operating near Lot 47" and "Residents advised to shield windows for privacy." I clicked through a few posts and found threads full of people speculating about my cameras, my background, even my dog. One guy wrote, How do we know he's not recording kids? That one made me see red. I almost responded, almost, but I knew better. Feeding trolls only makes them bolder. Instead, I doubled down, added another camera, put a spotlight above the garage, motion activated, with a siren if needed. I started backing my truck into the driveway, not pulling in head first, so I could leave fast if I had to. I taught Boone to bark at flashlights. That weekend, I caught Roger standing on the edge of my property with a long lens camera, not filming, just standing, watching. I walked toward him calmly. He didn't move. I crossed the line where my gravel met the community-maintained blacktop and stopped a foot from him. "You're trespassing," I said. "I'm conducting an inspection." "You don't have jurisdiction." "We have reasonable suspicion." "Of what?" "Of security code violations." I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Repeat that?" He walked off. I posted the video, just 20 seconds of Roger looking like an amateur villain from a bad reality show, mumbling about suspicion and backing away like a wet raccoon. I didn't tag anyone, didn't mention the HOA. Just uploaded it with the caption, "Neighborhood cosplay gets weird." Over 10,000 views in 2 days. I got anonymous emails calling me a danger to the community. I also got a delivery of 20 pizzas I never ordered. The receipt had a fake name, HOAWELCOMECOMMITTEE. Cute. Then someone keyed the word SPY into my truck's driver's side door. That was when I installed the last camera, the one facing the street, and linked it directly to a cloud server with facial recognition. I didn't want trouble, but it was circling, closing in, and I was done pretending it wasn't real. Saturday morning started like most of mine do. Early coffee, a slow walk with Boone down to the edge of the woods, and a brief moment where the silence almost felt like it used to before this whole HOA circus took root. I had plans to hit the hardware store, pick up a new chain for the gate, maybe stop by the gun range. Nothing dramatic. But the moment I opened the gate to leave, I knew the day had other plans. A white SUV was parked sideways across my gravel driveway, blocking the only exit. Big black letters across the side, Pinewood Estates Neighborhood Patrol, Roger's toy. He was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, sunglasses on, even though the morning fog hadn't burned off yet. With him were 4 other guys, all wearing the same black polo shirts with some off-brand badge logo embroidered on the chest, tactical belts with what looked like pepper spray, and cheap walkie-talkies. One of them was chewing sunflower seeds and spitting them into my grass. I just stood there for a moment, hands still on the gate. Boone growled low in his throat beside me. Roger pushed off the hood and stepped forward like he was introducing a movie scene. "Turner," he said, "we need to talk." I said nothing, just reached back and clicked the gate shut. He took another step closer, out of the truck. "I'm not in the truck," I said. "You were about to be." "Not anymore." One of his guys smirked like that was the cleverest thing he'd heard all year. Another one cracked his knuckles theatrically. This wasn't some random visit. This was a setup. "I'm going to need you to come out and speak to us properly," Roger said. "Face to face. Like a man. Who says I'm not being proper? This is a security matter." "Whose security?" "The community's." "I'm not part of your community, remember?" He didn't like that. "You've built a surveillance tower that violates neighborhood standards. On property not governed by your HOA. You're a liability." "I'm a private citizen on private land." Roger reached to his hip. Not a gun, thank God, but he rested his hand on a baton clipped to his belt like a kid playing sheriff. That's when I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. The dispatcher sounded tired. I explained the situation. I was being blocked in my own driveway, surrounded by men posturing like mall cops with a vendetta. She said, "Okay, sir, is there any immediate threat? There's 5 men outside my gate trying to coerce me. Has anyone physically touched you?" "Not yet." "Then it's classified as a non-urgent civil matter. We'll send a patrol when available." I stared at the screen, then at the 5 guys outside my gate. Then I hung up and opened a group chat titled Devil's Barbecue Crew. It was a joke from years ago. Me and some of my old unit. Guys who didn't spook easy. I typed, "Need backup." Not a joke. "HOA thugs blocking me in. Can't leave. Show of force appreciated." Hit send. Then I walked to my truck, climbed in, locked the doors, and hit record on the dash cam. The next 4 hours were a masterclass in suburban escalation. Roger and his guys didn't leave. They didn't even pretend to. They paced. They knocked on my window. They shouted things like, "Just come talk, Jason, and we can do this the hard way or the easy way." Every word got picked up by the audio feed. 2 hours in, one of them walked behind my truck and pulled a screwdriver from his vest. I watched, stunned, as he crouched and jammed it into my rear tire, letting the air out with a loud hiss. That one I recorded up close on my phone, complete with his face and badge number. Not that it was real. These guys couldn't get real badges, so they made their own. 3 hours in, they started getting antsy. The seed spitter was sweating through his shirt. Another guy kept pacing like a dog that needed to be let out. Roger slammed a fist on my hood and shouted, "You think hiding in there makes you a man? You're a coward with toys and a camera." Boone, in the passenger seat, growled again. I scratched his head without looking away from Roger's face. No police. No backup. Just 5 jackasses in matching polos playing fantasy SWAT on my lawn while the real cops apparently debated what flavor of donut to pick for lunch. I texted my buddy Craig directly. "They're still here. Punctured my tire. Threats escalating. Any ETA." His reply was 2 words. "Almost there." I smiled for the first time that day. Roger didn't see it. He was too busy trying to figure out why the man in the truck still wasn't afraid. They came in 2 trucks. One black, one desert tan. Big growling diesel engines that made the birds scatter and Roger flinch before they even came into view. I saw the SUVs turn the corner from my side mirror and couldn't help but grin. Craig was driving the lead truck, always was the first one through the door. The man's a tank in boots, 6'6", broad like a freight container, shaved head, goatee, and a stare that could make concrete crack. Behind him came Danny, Miguel, Roy, Lenny, and Marcus, all guys I knew from Kandahar and Helmand, men who'd bled next to me, laughed under mortar fire, and once beat a general in poker using MRE crackers for chips. They parked with precision, blocking the street just behind the patrol SUV. I could see Roger's little militia start to twitch. One of them instinctively adjusted his belt like it would make him taller. Another backed up a step without realizing it. The doors opened. My guys stepped out one by one, calm as Sunday service, wearing jeans, ball caps, sunglasses. No yelling, no posturing, just silent presence. That's the thing about real strength. It doesn't need to shout. Craig led them to the gate, stopped 3 feet from Roger, and said in a voice so flat it might have been carved from stone, "You have 30 seconds to move your car and leave." Roger puffed up like a blowfish. "This is an HOA matter. You're interfering in a legally sanctioned security action." Craig raised an eyebrow. "Security action?" "Yes. This property is in violation. We're executing an enforcement protocol." "You're holding a man in his own driveway," Craig said, stepping forward. "That's false imprisonment. 4 hours, surrounded, tire slashed, threats issued. We've got it all on video. You're lucky we didn't come with lawyers first." One of Roger's guys, the one with the patchy beard and too much caffeine in his bloodstream, made the worst decision of his month. He grabbed his baton and raised it like he was about to play Mall Cop Ninja. Craig moved faster than a man his size should be able to. He caught the guy's wrist mid-swing, twisted it sideways until the baton clattered to the ground, then kicked it away. No punches, no yelling, just complete control. Another HOA hero lunged in with a grunt, aiming for Craig's ribs, and got shoulder-checked by Danny so hard he went down gasping, flat on his back. Miguel snatched the pepper spray from the third guy's belt and casually dropped it in the dirt like trash. Lenny and Marcus boxed Roger in, hands behind their backs, not touching him, just standing close enough that he couldn't move without brushing into a wall of veterans who looked very, very unimpressed. Roger's mouth opened and closed. "This is assault. I'm calling the police." Craig pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and held it up like a mirror. Already did. Told them to bring a real unit this time. Roger turned red. Not angry red. Embarrassed red. Cornered red. His little army was in pieces. 2 guys on the ground. One had bolted behind the patrol SUV, and the last was staring at his shoes like they held the meaning of life. I opened my door and stepped out of the truck. My leg had gone a little numb from the angle, but Boone hopped down beside me like he was ready for war. I looked around at the mess. The popped tire, the scratches on my hood, the dent from Roger's earlier tantrum, and then at my friends, calm and watchful. Craig nodded toward me. "You good? Better now." Roger hissed, "You'll regret this." Craig just shrugged. "You already do." For the first time in hours, the wind moved again. The morning fog had burned off. The sun came out. and my driveway didn't feel like a prison anymore. Then down the street, we heard it. Sirens. Real ones this time. Someone must have finally marked the call as urgent. The squad cars arrived hot and loud. 2 black and whites with sirens still wailing and lights splashing across the asphalt. They rolled in fast and skidded to a stop behind my friend's trucks like they were expecting an active shooter or a meth lab explosion. Funny how massive street brawl gets their attention, but 5 armed men trapping a civilian doesn't merit more than a coffee break. 2 officers stepped out, hands hovering near their sidearms. A third stayed in the car, radio chattering. Boone let out one bark, and I gave a low whistle. He sat down, tail wagging like this was all just another game. Roger practically sprinted toward the cops. His shirt was soaked with sweat, his face still flushed with the color of pride turned sour. He pointed back at my driveway, spitting words like a broken faucet. "They assaulted us!" That man and those others. They attacked my team while we were performing official HOA duties. One of the officers, a stocky guy with a buzz cut and a jaw like a brick, held up a hand. "Calm down, sir. Who's the property owner here?" "I am," I said, stepping forward. The officer gave me a once-over. "You, Jason Turner?" "Yeah." "Got ID?" "Of course." I handed it over. He looked at it, then back at Roger. "And who are you?" "Roger Hannity, head of security for Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association." The officer blinked slowly. "And this is HOA jurisdiction." "It's adjacent. His property affects community standards." "Stop." The cop turned to me. "Sir, you mind explaining what happened?" I didn't speak. I opened my phone, pulled up the folder labeled HOA Idiocy, and tapped the first video. Dash cam. Audio. 4 straight hours of being boxed in, shouted at, threatened. Then the tire being slashed. The baton. Roger screaming. The officer watched for maybe 2 minutes before exhaling through his nose. "You've got all of this time stamped." "Yes, sir." "Backed up to the cloud. Facial recognition tags if you need 'em." Roger started again. He doctored that. "This is all part of his intimidation campaign." "Sir," the second officer cut in, holding up a hand. "One of your men used a baton." "That's a weapon. He struck first. He damaged property. You detained this man without authority, and you vandalized his vehicle. That's false imprisonment, assault, and criminal mischief." "We were just enforcing HOA." "HOA is not a law enforcement agency," the first cop snapped. "You can't detain people. You can't vandalize property. And you damn sure can't stage an armed standoff in a residential street." I saw it then, the shift in Roger's posture, the moment he realized the badge wasn't on his side anymore. The officers approached him. "Sir, please turn around. Hands behind your back." "You're arresting me?" "You're being detained pending investigation. You have the right to remain silent." The cuffs clicked. Roger's jaw dropped like he'd just been told the world was flat. His guys didn't move. One tried to walk away but was stopped by the second cop. Another sat down on the curb with his face in his hands. Craig, standing off to the side, gave me a small nod. I nodded back. The officers asked if I needed medical attention. I said no. They asked if I wanted to file charges. I said yes, absolutely. I gave them everything. The letters, the threats, the fake citations, the slashed tire, the mailbox tampering, even the pizza prank. And then I handed them the cease and desist letter my lawyer had sent 2 weeks ago. Unopened, returned to sender. While one officer wrote up the report, the other asked if I'd be willing to testify if it went to court. I smiled. I'm former Marine Corps. I've sat through worse cross-examinations than whatever Roger's HOA lawyer can throw at me. They laughed. That was the first real laugh I'd heard from anyone in this neighborhood in weeks. As they loaded Roger into the back of the cruiser, he locked eyes with me through the window. It wasn't rage anymore. It was panic. And under that panic, I saw something else. Fear. Because bullies only stay brave when the crowd's still cheering. And Roger's crowd, they weren't showing up anymore. The next morning, my front yard was quiet. Eerily so. No SUVs. No neighborhood joggers pretending not to stare. Just the hum of my perimeter sensors and the occasional breeze rustling the camera tower I'd built, the one that apparently sparked a war. Boone and I sat on the porch sipping coffee. Well, I sipped. He chewed on a rubber grenade toy Craig had brought as a joke. The calm felt strange, artificial, like that moment before a second wave hits. I knew this wasn't over, not even close. By noon, my lawyer called. You'll want to check the county website. I pulled it up, expecting legal noise about the charges against Roger. Instead, I found something better, a formal inquiry opened by the Office of Civil Oversight. Headline: Unlawful activity alleged in private HOA security operations. Turns out, once the cops reviewed my footage, they flagged it to the county. The whole mess triggered a deeper look, not just into the assault, but into the broader question of what the hell this Pinewood Estates Security Committee actually was. Spoiler alert, nothing. No charter, no legal standing, no registered employees, just a group of dudes in matching polos with delusions of authority, and a president who gave them enough leash to choke a community. I got a call the next day from a guy named Mason, investigator with the State Attorney General's office. He asked if I'd be willing to provide additional documentation. I laughed. I have a Google Drive labeled HOA Creep Files. It's sorted by type and severity. Want access? Mason chuckled. Yes, Mr. Turner, yes, I do. Within 48 hours, it snowballed. 3 other residents, people I didn't even know, came forward. A single mother named Janine said Roger had threatened to fine her for having a trampoline visible from the road. She'd paid out of fear. A retiree named Mr. Chen said someone keyed the word foreign into his Buick after he refused to donate to the HOA's Security Patrol Gas Fund. A third guy, Brian, had actual voicemails from Roger threatening consequences if he didn't remove a pride flag from his porch. And the real kicker? The money. Somehow this fake security committee had collected over $45,000 in so-called fines and community enforcement fees over the last 2 years. Not a cent had gone to the HOA's general fund. No trace in the official ledger, just a separate account tied to a company called Civic Defense Solutions, LLC, owned, of course, by none other than Roger Hannity. So now the state was involved, the county was involved, and the HOA board suddenly scrambling. Diana Shaw, queen of pine-scented suburbia and president of the Pinewood Estates HOA, called an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited naturally, but one of my new allies, Brian, the pride flag guy, streamed it live on Facebook. There she stood, lips tight, blazer crisp, voice like a school principal delivering bad news to parents who already knew their kid was the bully. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said. The security team was an auxiliary force intended to preserve safety and aesthetic order. Mr. Hannity acted with the board's awareness, but without direct instruction. "We are conducting an internal review." Translation: we're trying to save our asses without admitting we knew the whole thing was illegal, but it got worse for them. Because someone, and I'm not saying it was me, but it absolutely was, leaked emails. See, back when I got my first idiotic fine notice, I traced the email server it came from. HOA President Diana had used a private Gmail to send unofficial messages, including one chain where she said, "Turner is dangerous. We need to isolate him before he becomes a problem." Another gem: "If the police won't help, Roger's team will have to handle it, quietly." That one hit the news. Local news at first, then the regional affiliate picked it up. Headline: Homeowner harassed by rogue HOA enforcers, county investigates. Diana tried to spin it, claimed the emails were taken out of context, called it a smear campaign, but the damage was done. More people came forward, more evidence surfaced, more voices joined the noise. The HOA wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. The committee disbanded, 3 board members resigned. One of Roger's goons agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency, and suddenly the feds were asking questions about campaign donations, falsified inspection reports, and undeclared income. It was bigger than anyone thought. And it all started with a guy and his camera tower who wouldn't roll over. They tried to settle. 2 weeks after the county filed formal charges, I got an email from a law firm representing Pinewood Estates HOA. Polite, professional, oozing corporate civility. They wanted to resolve the situation amicably. Their offer, $20,000, a non-disclosure agreement, and the removal of sensitive content from public view. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Mason, the state investigator, and then shared it with the other residents who were now part of the case. Brian nearly threw his phone across the room. Mr. Chen just chuckled and said, "Amicable, my ass." The prosecution wasn't playing games either. Charges were formally filed against Roger Hannity: false imprisonment, criminal mischief, harassment, operating an unlicensed security business, wire fraud, and, cherry on top, tax evasion. Two of his patrol goons got misdemeanor charges and were offered plea deals. One of them flipped. His deposition sealed the coffin. As for Diana Shaw, she was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, aiding and abetting harassment, and obstruction of justice. Her defense attorney tried to paint her as misled by Roger, but the leaked emails, especially the one where she ordered quiet action, told a different story. Her courtroom demeanor didn't help either. Icy, smug, the kind of person who's used to getting her way and can't comprehend that the world stopped listening. I testified on a Monday morning. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No gavel smashing, no gasps, just fluorescent lighting, worn benches, and a judge who looked like he'd rather be fly fishing. Still, when the video played, 4 hours of me trapped in my driveway, followed by the arrival of my guys and the brief surgical takedown of the fake cops, the room got very quiet. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Turner, was this behavior from the HOA typical? Define typical, I said. A few people chuckled. I didn't. It escalated for months. They used intimidation, surveillance, vandalism, and public shaming. The day of the incident, they slashed my tire and told me to come out like a man. If my friends hadn't shown up, I don't know how far it would have gone. The prosecutor nodded. Your Honor, the defendant used his role within a community association to build a private fiefdom of fear. This was not about aesthetics. This was about control. Roger's lawyer tried to spin it, claimed Roger was passionate about safety, that his background in private security training made him act decisively. When asked if Roger was a certified security professional, the attorney mumbled something about independent coursework. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is that legal speak for YouTube videos? The courtroom laughed. Roger didn't. The verdict came down hard. Roger, 2 years in prison plus 3 years probation. He also owed restitution for damages, including my truck tire and legal costs. 2 of his patrol members got 1 year probation and mandatory community service. One of them was ordered to attend de-escalation training. The irony wasn't lost on me. Diana Shaw was fined $30,000, banned from holding any HOA or administrative office in the state for 5 years, and faced civil suits from at least 4 residents, including me. But it didn't stop there. The judge issued a formal recommendation for an audit of Pinewood Estates' HOA finances going back 5 years. That alone caused another 3 board members to resign. The HOA, now bleeding credibility and facing class action suits, was placed under external supervision by the county until further notice. And remember those cops who ignored my initial 911 call? Yeah, that didn't go unnoticed. Turns out, Rogers Civic Defense Solutions had made 3 separate donations to the local sheriff's office over the past year. Small sums, $500 here, $1,000 there, all registered as community support. Technically legal. But one officer had forwarded my first call that day to voicemail, marking it low priority, despite the words trapped, threatened, and armed individuals in the transcript. That officer got suspended pending internal review. Another one, the dispatcher who brushed me off, was quietly reassigned. The department issued a formal apology. I framed it. For appearances? Maybe, but it mattered. Because systems only work when someone kicks them hard enough to notice their own failures. The tower still stands. Somehow, after all the screaming, the threats, the subpoenas, and the squad cars, it's still there. Steel, camera mounts, motion lights. I reinforced the base after the whole HOA disaster just in case someone got any bright ideas about sabotage. I even added a floodlight. It points directly at Roger Hannity's old house. He moved out 2 weeks after sentencing. The for sale sign went up the day after his wife threw a full trash bag full of faux police uniforms into the front yard and slammed the door hard enough to rattle Boone's water bowl. The place sold quick. Young couple. No kids. The husband waved when they moved in. That was new. The rest of the neighborhood? It's quieter now. No patrol SUVs idling in the shadows. No creepy flyers. No late-night standoffs at my gate. There's even a neighborhood BBQ scheduled next month. First in 3 years, apparently. I got an invite. The new HOA board president dropped it off in person, hands visible, voice respectful. He apologized too. Said, "We failed you." I told him, "You failed everyone." He nodded. Brian, Janine, Mr. Chen. We stay in touch. There's a kind of quiet alliance now between the ones who spoke up. We helped each other through the hearings, the news interviews, the paperwork. It's not just about being neighbors anymore. It's about being the ones who didn't shut up when it mattered. Boone's more relaxed these days, sleeps by the porch again, doesn't growl at shadows, but he still lifts his head when cars drive by slow. Muscle memory, I guess. As for me, my business is booming. Turns out when word gets around that you stood your ground against a rogue HOA paramilitary cosplay club, people trust you to protect their property. I had a client ask, "You ever think about writing a book?" I laughed. Maybe one day. For now, I prefer to record everything on camera. Craig and the guys, we still meet up. Last time it was ribs and whiskey in Roy's backyard. No fighting, just stories and a hell of a lot of laughing. At one point, Craig raised his glass and said, "Next time, maybe let the cops do their job before we suit up." I said, "Sure, just remind them to answer the damn phone next time." We all cracked up, but I meant it. Because that's the thing about people who play with power. They never expect someone to stand taller. They expect compliance, fear, silence. What they don't expect is company, brotherhood, community born not of rules, but of resistance. And when that comes, well, some lights never go out, especially the ones aimed directly at your front line.